In today's video, I'm going to show you how I get the best autofocus settings on the GH5 and GH5s. Now, this has come from years of experience with both cameras. I've tested all the different firmware, and I really believe that this particular setting is the best depending on if you shoot in this very particular way. Now, if you're planning on bobbing your head in and out of shot and all that kind of stuff, it may not apply to you. But if you just want to do a good static shot like this with minimal background pulsing, this video is for you. Here we go. All right, so let's test these glorified autofocus settings on the GH5s. So I'm using the 12mm f1.4 lens at 1.4, so hopefully this looks good and hopefully there's not a lot of pulsing going on in the background. So there's a few things I've noticed that this is very lens dependent. Some lenses work better than others with these particular settings, but overall I still feel like this is the best for static shooters. Now, you still have to rely on one area mode. So I've got a box set up right on my neck and chin, just sort of like in this area, and this seems to work the best. I have the sensitivity turned down to -3 and the speed either set to 0 or 1 depending on the lens, so you have to make a decision whether or not that's going to work for you. Now, this might not work for all lenses in all situations, but if you're doing a talking headshot like this, or you just want something in focus without all the pulsing, this will definitely do the job. What I'm going to do now is just take a couple steps back, see how it responds. It should still be fine. And I'm going to get really close to it now like this. Now, being that the sensitivity has been turned down, we should get less pulsing, but it may actually just slow it a little bit. And I kind of prefer this, getting the slow focus pulls as opposed to it jittering. So I have a feeling this will work fine. Now, when it comes to face tracking, for example, this will work best without sunglasses on in my testing as well. Sunglasses seem to confuse the situation a little bit. And let's see if there's any pulsing in the background, being again that it's sort of all turned down to a slower setting. Hopefully it's still going to work fine. Now, I've been using this on and off on the channel now for quite some time, and if you are nitpicky about the background doing anything that it shouldn't be doing in terms of the pulsing, then you probably will still be dissatisfied. But I really feel like now this has got an autofocus system that works really reliably, just not as good as one area mode, depending on your distance from the camera. And now I'm standing a little bit further back and I have a box set up over my stomach, and odds are this is going to be working fine as well. Just to show that it is on autofocus mode right now, let's go up to the camera. Boom, it's locked on, beautiful, and all the way back. And now the box is probably a little bit over my legs, but being that I'm still over the box, odds are it's still going to be in focus. I guess we'll find out a little bit later, but I've been using this for now for quite some time and I really feel like it works well. If you're going to be moving slowly towards the camera, it may hunt a little bit, but generally speaking, it will find you with that one area mode and lock on. And turning the sensitivity down is a really good thing unless you're bobbing in and out of frame a lot. So overall, let me know what you think of the quality of the autofocus. One of the things I would love to see Panasonic do to these GH series of cameras, at least all the existing ones, and even probably down to the G85 if they could do it, is to work with Olympus for their autofocus system for video. Now, recently the OMD EM1 Mark II got a firmware upgrade giving it phase detection autofocus, which is in a whole different level to contrast-based detection autofocus, which it had prior to that firmware upgrade. Now it's infinitely better. So there's ways that firmware can improve it. I just wish Panasonic would get away from this contrast-based detection autofocus for video. For photos, it's fine. For video, sucks. So if you're relying on it, it's gotten better, right? Like, it's usable now. Is there anything distracting going on? I guess I'll find out in the comments section. People are brutal. Up next, I'm going to show you how I set up autofocus mode for the Panasonic GH5 and GH5s. So with the camera in movie mode on the top dial, once you can see that there, we need to basically hit this button on the right here, which is the focus settings menu. Now, one area mode is this second last one. Now we can rotate this dial here to get to it if you're currently on a different one. Now, once we have this set up, we can then touch anywhere on the screen and have a point we can use for one area mode. The best thing about this is we can resize it using this top dial over here. So that's what I'm doing to get the autofocus point on screen. As long as I'm standing within the box, or my subject is, much like how I'm using autofocus with this camera right now, it's currently set up so it's here. It should stay in place really, really well. Now, we're going to do some deep diving in the menu here, and I'll show you that right now. Up next, I'm going to show you how to set up the custom settings that I like to use for these talking headshots. So we'll get into the main menu on the camera, And then from this second menu, which is the movie menu settings, we've got to go down to AF custom settings for video. And I've currently got that set to on. Now, if we go down to set, I'll show you my settings. -1 for speed and -3 for AF sensitivity. Now, this works best for talking headshots. If you're going to be doing other types of autofocus, you may need to sort of mess around with these settings. But in all of my years using the GH5 and recently getting the GH5s cameras, this -3 is the best for static subjects. If you're just going to be standing around or doing a talking headshot video, these work really well because it won't second guess itself as often. So -3 on the sensitivity is definitely the way to go. Now, the speed, it's up to you if you want to leave it at 0 or 1 or -1 or whatever works for your particular situation. But for those shots that you saw, everything was set to -1 on the speed and -3 on the AF sensitivity. Now, there's one last setting I'm going to show you as well. Now, if we go down to the C with the wrench, we go to focus release shutter and then go into that option. And then on page 1 of 7, we see one called AF AE lock AF on and near. So I always find that this works best on near if your subject is closer to the camera than further away. Now, if you're going to be doing the reverse of what you saw where you want to focus on the background, you might want to change this to far. But for everything you just saw in the video, this particular setting was used. Now, some people argued that that was only for photos, but it isn't. There's clear, great tests of this on YouTube, so just go look for it. It definitely works with video. In closing, if you're behind the camera, one area autofocus mode is by far the best. And if you're standing in front of the camera, one area autofocus mode is the best. I've done so many tests and sometimes face detection works fine and other times it doesn't. It really depends on what's going on behind you. Whereas if you create a box to the size of your subject in frame, you get far better results with far less hunting. Turn that sensitivity down and you'll be good to go. So in my experience, this is definitely the best setting for this particular camera. Now, I know different lenses will respond in different ways, but generally speaking, this is what I've come to use all of the time. Even if I'm at a desk, it seems to work really well. And if I was just to do anything like move out of the box and back, odds are it's still going to maintain focus like that as well because the sensitivity's turned down. Or if I move forward and back a little bit like this, like I would maybe in conversation, then odds are it's not going to pulse too much. I'll just do that again so you can see what it can do. And we'll see how it handles that and if it actually moved. Odds are it's going to stay stationary for that moment where I may move forward and backwards like this. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your preferred settings when it comes to the Panasonic autofocus. Over the years, I love these cameras. It's the only sort of thing holding them back. If Panasonic get this right, they're going to dominate the market. They've got all the tech. They've had it for years. People want autofocus. Panasonic should give them reliable autofocus. And if you're always behind the camera, it might not matter for you, but it is one of those things, man. Times are changing. People want it. And it's definitely a situation where I'm not always behind the camera. So it works well if the autofocus is great. So thanks again for watching. Catch you soon. See ya.